overdrive. You feel a need for something, and it's coming alive. The moment is rising like you hoped it would. Who knew a tangent could feel so good? Let her take you on another tangent, turn a thought into a whole new planet. She'll make your sense of wonder feel gigantic. Ember lights the way like magic. You arrived to learn the facts, but you stayed for her glow. You heard her musical laugh, and her quick wit stole the show. The moment is rising like you hoped it would. Who knew a tangent could feel so good? Let her take you on another tangent, turn an idea into a whole new planet. She can piece the universe from fragments. Ember lights the dark like magic. Who knew a detour could hit like this? Smart mouth, star maps, and a sideways twist. No religion, just a mind on fire, taking us higher and higher and higher. Let her take you on another tangent, turn a thought into a whole new planet. She'll make your sense of wonder feel gigantic. Ember lights the way like magic.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 900. Well, technically, it's day 899. Day 900 is after midnight, but we're doing a different show tomorrow. It's the regularly scheduled debate review, which always happens on Saturday. So we're doing day 900 observed. Nonetheless, we've made it 900 days. Now, for those of you who are joining us late into the journey, the reason that I call this day 900 is because transition is a multifaceted process. First of all, I've been living as a trans person for many years. At a certain point, I decided to actually go for the medical thing, right? But it comes in stages too. There's different procedures. There's yada yada. So where do we put day number 1 as we're tracking transition progress? So I decided to go with the day that my name change became official, when my legal name was Ember. And you might notice that's shorter than the amount of time this channel has been this channel. I've been going by Ember for over a decade, but I hadn't bothered to legally change my name. So I did as part of the process. And so day 900 of legally being Ember is what I'm answering questions before I even get to the questions. I do have a list of questions. I asked people to send in questions, and there's a lot. Some of them are spicy, some of them are not exactly friendly, but we're going to do our best with them. It should be pretty neat. But thank you all so much for joining. I see Tommy from the Humanity Live. Tommy has a clip of me and Lil on a different show taking a call from someone who has this whole rambly thing, and he concludes it with even lobsters. And so I'm tempted, and I may do it, to put a lobster emoji in because we have a fuck ton of custom emojis, but not all of them get used. And so from time to time, I take the ones that really don't get used and change them out for something else that people might find amusing, even if only for an inside joke. Aunt Jer's here telling me that the little happy fella on the thumbnail is eating my shoulder because I am in fact a snack, as it turns out. Goodness. Mike is here. Ember Lynn, hello, hello. Margie, you have foiled the Google auto translate. I don't know what you're saying. I'm guessing it's Maori. Maori. That one's better. We'll go with the second take. Anarchic Fox, hello, hello. Miranda's here. Trusty Ape, good to see you. Let's see. I think, forgive me if I've missed anybody. Miranda points out there are actually already lobster emojis. I know. I would need to do like, I don't know, some kind of special, maybe a rainbow lobster. I don't know. We'll workshop it later. For now, we do have boobies, and as long as we have boobies, we're probably fine. Okay, so I don't know. I don't have like a long interlude to read like I sometimes do, despite the fact that this is sort of a milestone moment and may in fact be the last one of these kind of milestone moments because of various reasons that I don't want to think about. But the reason I've been doing updates every 100 days all the way through was because one of the reasons I decided to do the transition part of my transition publicly was so that other people like me could see what it's like as you go through the process. Everything I do on this channel is to try to be the voice that younger me needed and couldn't find. And so I want to tell other younger me's where things are and where things stand. So on that note, there's a lot of things that have nothing to do with transition. There's a lot of social factors surrounding transition, like being a trans person in Trump's United States is very bad for your health. And not just because the red hats might try to attack you, although there is that. It's because other things are a problem, like getting medical care at all can be very difficult, even if you aren't looking into anything related to your transition. Like, say, for example, you have a broken arm or an ear infection or a stab wound. Doctors may not treat you because you're trans. Because who's going to stop somebody who wants to discriminate for that reason? Maybe you live in a state where there's shield laws, where there's state level protections. Good luck, if so. Even if someone does, what are you going to do about it? File a lawsuit? With what money? Because you probably don't have a job, because firing you for being trans, who's going to stop them? And even if you do manage to somehow afford an attorney, good luck getting them to return your calls. So it's a difficult place to try to be alive just now. But as far as transition itself, I don't even have words. I have literally never been happier with myself. Now, that's somewhat easy to say because before I started, I was not happy with myself at all. So when the bar is on the floor, it's not difficult to clear. But it's not a constant upward trajectory. Nothing in life ever is. There's good days, there's bad days. There were a lot of times early on when I would look in the mirror and I'd see glimpses of who I was becoming, physically speaking. But mostly I saw old me. And over time, it got harder and harder to see old me, to the point that, months and months ago, I looked in the mirror and I looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't even see past Ember. So it's gradual. But the trend line goes upward, but it's not just appearance. As I've said, multiple times in on multiple shows and channels, and everywhere the opportunity to say so comes up. There's so much more to it. There's how your brain works. There's how you perceive the world. Smells are more intense, colors are deeper, your preferred temperature range shifts, the things that taste good to you, your preferred flavor of ice cream, whether you like pineapple, all of these things can change, because it turns out your body is a biochemical system, and if you change the chemical that it runs on, it will run differently, and that's pretty neat as well. But perhaps most notable is the way the nerve endings feel, because the feel of my own skin, like there's a baseline sense of yourself, your proprioception, and your general mental map of your overall condition. Before, and I don't know if this is the default for everybody, but before, for me, it was just like null when there wasn't anything actively wrong. Like, if a mosquito wasn't biting me, or a rock wasn't falling on my foot, or whatever the case may be, it was vaguely there, but it didn't really register. But post transition, as things have changed over the many, many months and years at this point, the sense of sensation itself, a touch, feels different. But more importantly, I can actively feel my skin. It's not just a neutral baseline nothing. It's actively there, and it feels good. So I can literally say, for the first time in my life, I feel comfortable in my own skin, literally. And so that's pretty cool too. That's just my take. Your experience may differ. Oh, goodness. All right. So I could go on and on and on, but I'm worried about my energy reserves. As many of you know, my health has also not been great for completely unrelated reasons. And I'm worried about losing power before I can answer some of the questions, because the whole point was, if this is our last chance, I want to get to as many questions as I reasonably can. So let's begin, shall we? Should I change the background? I feel like I should change the background. Maybe. What background should we do? We can, well, this is the transfactual background, and that's not really what we're going for. Although I do like the moving colors. We could do the Space Pride flag background. That's a nice one. I also have one of an animated version of the trans Space Pride flag. I never did quite finish the animation though. I don't really like it moves, and that's fine, but like I don't really like how it moves. So it's an idea. Could do the pirate flag, even though you can't really see the pirate flag while I'm up here in the middle like this, but it is pretty neat. We could just do full screen pirate flag. It's not bad. You know what? We'll keep it for the moment. Maybe I'll change it later. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. All right. So I'm gonna keep trying to keep half an eye on the chat in case you do have a question. In fact, I should probably pin that in the chat. Let's do that now. If a question occurs, you know what? Let's do it easy. If you have a question, tag me and I'll try to answer it. Boop. And we will pin that so that people who wander by and don't go back to the beginning will know what's going on, right? It'll be fun. It'll be neat. Probably. A part of me was worried, and I'm prone to tangents. I've always been prone to tangents. The medicine I'm on makes me a little bit of a flibbertigibbet, and so I'm extra prone to tangents. C'est la vie. On the plus side, I'm not crying right now, and that's a plus. That's a nice trade-off. You know what? Let's focus. Let's start with some questions, shall we? Okay. Holy shit, there's a lot of them. First question, and I tried to put these in something resembling a reasonable order with like related topics next to each other, but it just I did my best. So, starting with why won't trans people answer my questions? This, of course, depends on the person, right? And not just the person being asked, but the person doing the asking. If you're an Andrew Wilson, Jim Bob, aggressively ignorant type, you might be putting people off, right? Like if you are the kind of person who goes after atheists demanding they justify their atheism, or if you go after Black people demanding they justify their humanity, then I venture that a lot of minorities don't want to talk to you either. And it's not because they're afraid to answer your questions. It's because you're an unpleasant person. So maybe do some work on yourself and do better. But also, not every trans person is an educator on this topic. Most trans people just want to live their lives, and educating you is not their job. And I mean, how would you feel if somebody came up to you and started asking questions about your genitals and why you feel the way you do? And have you always, had this mental illness of being a cis person or a hetero person or whatever the case may be, or liking pineapple or not liking pineapple or whatever, Like, think about how you would feel if you were being asked questions like that, and maybe try to be a little more respectful, but understand that nobody's under any obligation to answer questions ever. You're not entitled to anyone's medical history. You're not entitled to anyone's personal history. You're certainly not entitled to information about anybody's family. You know who you are. So it could be how you ask, it could be who you're asking. I understand if, a person doesn't want to talk to a specific trans creator for whatever reason, but there are lots of trans people running around whose entire thing is answering people's questions, educating, presenting information to prevent misconceptions and misunderstandings. There's me, there's the Transatlantic Call-In Show, which the creators who wind up on that vary. Sometimes Dr. Ben is there. He's been very busy with a new residency program lately, but sometimes he's there and he can answer medical questions. Sometimes Luxander is there, and it has been involved in politics in a very long time, and has a great deal of built up accumulated knowledge of the subjects that typically come up. One of the frequent producers is Arden Hart, who's been doing activism for many years. Like there's a lot of different perspectives, and that's just on that one show. There's a bunch of other creators with different perspectives and different knowledge bases. So there's people you can ask if you can't get if you can't find a way to communicate in good faith with the people in your real life. It's an idea. I'm over explaining. Hopefully you get it. What does being transgender even mean? What is trans? Okay, you know what? I should be timestamping these. Maybe I'll go back through and do it later. No, that's stupid. I should do it now. Because I'm not going to want to do it later. I can find the first question or two, no problem, but finding all of them would be a nightmare. So let me Q1, and this is Q2, and we're at 19 minutes and 33 seconds. Cool. What does being transgender even mean? What is trans? Okay, so this one, if you don't know by now, you're probably fresh to this discussion. You've just heard of trans people for the first time. your child has just come out to you, or a friend at work has just come out, or whatever. You're brand new, you have no idea what's going on. So for you, in short, to be trans means that your gender is different from what was assumed about you at birth. And sometimes people don't figure that out until later. Like, there's this idea that if you don't know when you're a kid, then it's not real. But remember, we live in a culture that tells people you can't do that. You have to be the gender you're being told to be by everyone around you. And because that message gets reinforced from everywhere, then a lot of people don't realize that they even can be something else, that they can live in a different way until much later. Sometimes teenagers, sometimes young adult, sometimes considerably later than that. That's another one of the reasons that my transition started so dang late. By the time I had the language and figured out what the hell everything meant, I thought it was too late for me. I thought the best I would ever accomplish is to get stuck halfway in between, and not like non-binary people who rock the fuck out of being in between, but like some kind of hideous freak. It bugged me a lot, especially since I got called a hideous freak for most of my childhood. So I put it off, even once the option was technically available. There's a long story attached, perhaps another time. The point is, when you figure out you're trans, doesn't matter. It's never too late. And being trans just means giving up pretending to be a gender that you never were. And there's something pretty cool about that. What? Oh, this is gonna suck. I really should have like got a I can't get a producer, but I should have got a producer to make timestamps for me. Okay, 22:15. What is your real name? See, I got a little ahead of myself on the questions. As I said, my real name is Ember. That is my real name. Yeah, I know it's dumb to use your real name on the internet, but that is my real name. I went to great lengths to make sure it is my real name. But it's also weird that people assume a trans person's name isn't their real name. Like, what even is a real name? What do we mean by that? Are we talking like biologically? Is it encoded in your DNA? No, it's a legal document. That's all it is. It's some form that some human-built civilization issues to you saying you can legally call yourself this. And if somebody needs to look you up, that's where they can find you, that sort of thing. Like, we've had name change technology for hundreds of years, folks. Now, a lot of people probably mean what's your birth name, as if your name actually is biological somehow. But that's one of those weird double standards that apparently only ever applies to trans people, because when people get married and change their names, they just accept that. Or when a child gets adopted and they get their name changed, they just accept that. But for some reason, it's bigotry. It's always bigotry. With trans people, it's considered not valid, because I don't agree with the reason for your name change means your name change isn't valid in my eyes, and therefore I don't care what the law says. I'm going to do what I want. You know, it's just a dick thing to do. So, goodness. Why Ember? Jesus Christ, this writing it down is gonna suck. 21st, 18. Why Ember? So, this is another one I've told the story of a few times. In case you're new, there's a few different things that go into it. I went through a really bad period of burnout many years ago, and I wasn't entirely sure I was going to come back out of it. And so when I picked the name Ember, it was because I kind of visualized myself as like a burnt out piece of ash. And I was hoping, you might even say I had faith without any evidence, that somewhere in that cinder, there was still an ember, a little spark of the fire that once blazed like a supernova, so that I might be able to rekindle something along the lines of a will to live. It turns out I was right, but I didn't know that at the time. So it was kind of like a nominative determinism thing. But also, I like the name because it sounds sort of like amber with an accent. And so people just kind of understand. There's so many names that are slight variations on other more traditional names that people just kind of go along with that sort of thing these days, which is handy. But I also found out recently, thanks to Google Translate, that ember means human in Hungarian, apparently. And I kind of like that too. I didn't know it at the time, but I kind of like that. Let's see. Shoot, I'm not even numbering these properly. I'm so bad at my job. Okay. 26, 20. Cool. How well do you think you pass? I'm pretty sure I passed pretty damn well. TBH, I have been passing 4 years with no miscommunication. Like, on the few occasions that a person would misgender me, like at work or something, it was because they hadn't actually looked at me. And as soon as they look up, they go, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Every single time. My voice is passed on the phone when people, I have my own issues with my voice, but I know it passes because I've made phone calls with it and I get gendered correctly on the phone every single time, even with perfect strangers. It just, I just do pass. That said, passing is not that important. I understand it feels that way, and it sure as hell meant a whole lot to me at the very beginning. Like so much. When your confidence is it's like a new little sproutling. It's very small and very fragile, and it needs nutrients and sunlight and frequent watering in order to grow. So I get it, but it grows fast. And once it gets any kind of strength to it, things start to become a bit more regular. When people start misgendering you, it's the anomaly rather than the rule. And before you really know it, most people will just gender you correctly instinctively. Again, my experience, how things go for you may be different. And bearing in mind, I'm talking about a medical transition using hormones, right? So I'm you can pass with like just the social stuff, just change clothes, haircut, makeup, whatever. Yeah, you can, but I don't know about that experience, you know? So I just want to put that caveat on there. That's not something I've personally done. I'm just me all the time. That's all I can do anyway. Let's see. 28:45. How did you look before? Well, some of you have been around long enough to remember. I dare say different. Now don't ask trans people this. It's rather impolite. Sometimes they'll show you if they know you and they trust you, or they're like really, really confident. They've reached that point where past them doesn't really upset them anymore. I was so happy when you reach that point, you won't know. There won't be like an alarm in your brain, but something will come up. A person will mention something, and you'll be like, "Oh, I have a picture of that." And you want to go to show them, and then you realize it's past you in the photo. And that's when you know that you're far enough away from that past version of yourself that it's okay, because that's not you anymore. You know? It just kind of comes up in moments like that. And then you end up warning your friend, like trigger warning, and this has past Ember in it, you know? But some people are never comfortable with the pictures of how they used to look, and that's fine too. How we feel about things is a complicated matter that depends on a lot of things, our past experiences, which are unique to each of us. There's a lot. So I get it. Some people are never comfortable. Some people never have a problem showing the difference. Some people even use the differences to provoke conversations to pick fights with people on the Twitters. Trans people come in all kinds and flavors, so it can be interesting. But generally, it's considered uncouth to ask. Let's see. What issues are there with dating? Well, oh shit, I missed the exact timestamp on that one. I'm so bad at my job. I don't know how to answer that because I haven't like physically dated someone since I started my transition. Like many of you know, I have a long distance relationship with someone in Canada. You wouldn't know her. No, many of you would know her. It's the lovely and delightful Jess from How to Rule an Asteroid here on YouTube. But I haven't like physically dated someone in close proximity. So I don't know. I have no idea what the challenges are from firsthand experience. I know a lot of people talk about the difficulties with disclosure. Like if your new person doesn't know that you're trans, how do you tell them? Should you tell them? When should you tell them? In what way should you go about telling them? All of that stuff. And that's going to vary from person to person. I would just remind you that just like in every other situation, no one is entitled to your medical history. You don't owe disclosure. Now, some people believe in early disclosure for protection because there are some people who will kill trans people the trans panic defense for murder is still legal in like 20 US states. Like almost half the country, a person can find out someone is trans and just kill them. And they won't always get away with it. But in the states where it's legal, they'll at the very least get a reduced sentence. So yeah, disclosure is kind of important. But when and how, that has to be up to you. I can't tell you a hard and fast rule. You have to do it on the first date, or don't do it until like the 5th date. Make sure they're serious before you risk that information getting out. It's going to depend. It's going to depend on you and where you're at and how much you trust the other person and so many different factors. Prioritize your safety. That's all I'll say on that. You don't owe them anything. Prioritize your safety. And if they really care about you, they will understand why you're doing that. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to stop numbering the questions and just put the timestamp down. That will be less silly. 33. Oh, shit. I put the time for the last one wrong. Oh, this was a terrible idea. All right, 33:45. How do you learn the skills that nobody ever taught you? Well, fortunately, the internet exists. That's helped with a bit. I've said before that a lot of the things that I know how to do from like watching other people when I was young. Like my starter knowledge for makeup was from watching my grandmother. I had a lot of holes in my education, and it was from many, many, many years ago. But I remembered a surprising amount. And that was nice. But like there's a lot of other things. Fam, I only figured out how to adjust bra straps like 6 months ago. I knew that there were little adjusty tabs, but I had no idea how to do it. And I didn't even know how to look up how to do it, because you don't even know what you don't know. But once I found that out, oh my God, these things are so much more comfortable. It's weird how when your undergarments fit properly, it's more comfortable than when they don't. You know? Speaking of which, your body's going to change if you're doing a medical transition, if you're using hormones. Don't buy a permanent wardrobe for the first few years. Things are going to change size. And I don't mean just your chest. I mean everything will change size. Because it turns out, fun fact, hormones work on bones. You know how the transphobes make that argument that in 1,000 years, archaeologists will dig up your bones? Yeah, not so much as they think. Sex hormones are linked to bone health. We hear all this talk about puberty blockers and bone density, but it's also true for adult bones. If you aren't on a correct mix of hormones, then you start losing bone density. You know, that's how old people get osteoporosis, is their sex hormone production falls too much. Well, it's one of the reasons. I'm not a doctor, so don't at me. But for a while, my hormone mix was off. I was missing some rather important components, and my bones started getting, like, every time I moved my neck, it would pop, you know? A few other things like that. So it matters. It does actually affect your bones. But also, there's other factors as well, like where your body stores body fat. Again, not specifically your chest, but everywhere. And so, yeah, your skeleton will change shape very, very slowly, but those bones will move. I fucking assure you. But also your ligaments will change size, your body fat distribution will change, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In addition, your metabolism will change, your appetite will change, and so how much weight you're carrying overall will change, also very slowly, but it will change. And so you're going to end up with everything being a different size. You might gain a couple inches, you might lose a couple inches. You're going to need new shoes anyway, but like your shoe sizes will change, especially over the first couple of years. Okay, I can't say will change, just there's a very high likelihood, even if you're well into adulthood, you know? I don't want to generalize and say everyone, but for a lot of us, the hips move. The hips move a lot. My hips have moved a lot. Granted, they've gotten some help. Long separate story, but there's that. There's a number of trans women who've ended up with larger hips. And while some people point to the body fat distribution, no, the bones fucking move because, and I know this, they go the other way. There are a lot of trans men who at first are very uncomfortable with the size of their hips. First of all, besties, trust me, nobody but you notices that. Well, there's a few transphobes who think they notice that, but that's a whole other thing. I understand dysphoria. Trust me, I understand dysphoria. But like it's fine. You're your own worst critic, I promise you. But over many years, again, experiences will differ, but a lot of trans men lose their hips. The hips shrink back down. And that's true for a lot of little old ladies too. My grandmother was one of the people who complained about losing her hips after menopause because her hormone level dropped after menopause. And her hips, over the course of a few years, went back to pre-childbirth size. And she'd had 5 babies. Like, hormones make a big difference for your skeleton. And also your muscles and body fat distribution and all of that. All of that is to say, don't buy an entire new wardrobe immediately and expect it to fit in a couple of years. Things will change. So there's that. My goodness. All right. Let me mark where I'm at and check in with the chat. I shouldn't have checked in with the chat. Oh my goodness. Oh, I haven't measured. I can't answer that one. I haven't measured. Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. All right. Andrew says, I don't understand why someone even wants to know what you used to look like. Right? Like, I mean, I can kind of see like if it's a person who's like, I'd like to see baby pictures or something, but like I don't look like I did as a baby. Why would I look like I did as I don't know. It's very silly. Let me see. Apologies. I went longer than I expected before I checked back to find questions. So this is why I said tag me, because it'll make it stick out more. So if you do have a question, if you do have a serious question, hello Maya. I should be joining Maya on Sunday. I will be the discount weasels this weekend, substituting in, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's going to be a good one, despite my presence. Oh goodness. All right. Okay. I think we're good. I think we're good. Answer says, just trust me, I was a cute baby. And I believe it, because, I mean, just look at her now. How could she not be? You know? And our Geek Fox says, I don't often have serious questions. Oh, goodness. All right. Noise Ending says, I'm here just in time to see Andrew asking the most important question. It's true. It's true. Yeah. Goodness. All right. Let me see. Where were we? What's going on? What's happening? Okay. 42 minutes. These are just going to have to be approximates, because I am sucking at this. Why are some trans people Republicans? How am I supposed to answer that? I don't know what every other trans person is thinking. I mean, why is anyone a Republican? Because if you think about it, women Republicans are voting against their own interests. They're voting to get their own rights taken away, to be objectified, to be turned into property. Black Republicans, same thing, voting against their own interests, voting against their own right to vote, and voting to be turned back into property. Like, why are trans people Republicans? I don't know. I don't understand why anyone is a Republican currently. Like, fuck. However, the US Transgender Survey and the Williams Institute did compile some statistics, and 10% of trans people are Republicans. You're going to get some people who make bad decisions in any population, I suppose. But consider this, only 42% are Democrats. So while it is 4 times as many Democrats, half of us don't trust either party, and with good reason, as you may have observed from recent politics. So both parties kind of suck for us, though only one is actively trying to kill us. So there's that. Goodness. Hello, Beck. Thank you so much. It's been a while. I'm glad you're still kicking around. My goodness. Oh, all right. Let's see. 4415. I should be typing it into my notes so I know which question pops up when. I'm just terrible at this. Say la vie. Why are gay men so transphobic but lesbians are so accepting? First of all, I take offense at this bi erasure. While I am asexual, I don't experience. You know what? We're gonna take a little tour of the rainbow real quick. All right. So there's a few different kinds of things, right? There's multiple spectrums. This may come up later, and I may be getting ahead of myself. being trans or cis or non-binary or other, those things are all on one spectrum of your gender. Then there's your attraction, right? Like, are you straight? Are you gay? Are you bi? Are you pan? Are you all these other things? That is who you're attracted to. But we do our attraction in a weird way. We do it based on who you're attracted to in reference to your own gender, rather than just saying, I'm attracted to men, or I'm attracted to women, or I'm attracted to both, or I'm attracted to neither, whatever. Instead of just saying the simple thing, we say, well, I'm attracted to the same gender as myself, or I'm attracted to a different gender than myself, or I'm attracted to every gender. But like, then you have to do the calculus and be like, okay, so to figure out who you're attracted to, I have to know your gender. And that's fucking stupid, but that's the way we do it. So I will say this, and it relates to the dating question earlier. Your orientation may change. It may not. It's a roll of the dice. It's like cup size, right? Like, you don't know until things develop a little, because again, surveys and statistics, about a third of us experience a totally unchanged orientation. About a third of us reverse polarity. Who we were attracted to before reverses. So if you were attracted to men, regardless of your own gender, after transition, you might be attracted to women, regardless of the gender you're presenting it as now, And the other third of us just kind of open things up a bit. Now, it's hard to get exact specifics because we don't actually know how many people are bi or pan to begin with, but we end up with about a third, which is kind of neat. So, to the actual question, why are gay men so transphobic but lesbians are so accepting? I don't really know. Like, statistically, it's gay men aren't that transphobic, but like, they're among the least accepting of trans people in the whole LGBT community, the GSM community, if you will. Lesbians, on the other hand, are more accepting than anybody else, including trans people. So this is how good we are at winning medals. We can't even come in first in a who likes trans people more contest. Possibly because, I don't know. Well, I could speculate. Part of me wants to say because lesbians, while there's pluses and minuses to lesbian culture, there's a certain amount of confidence that comes with being a lesbian, because you tend to be in a relationship with women and they tend to be lesbians too, so there's a certain amount of confidence of understanding who you are and understanding who other people are and meeting them on their terms. And gay men are a little bit more picky. Gay men, again, broad generalization, does not apply to every individual. They're used to being a little bit of divas about who they like and who they get along with. But there could also be a strong genital preference. Like, gay men are gay men specifically because they're into penises. And so I don't know. I think we'd have to disambiguate, because like, do they feel differently as a broad group towards trans women versus trans men, or is it just all trans people, Because I suspect there's it's going to be an individual thing. It's not a broad category. There's going to be some gay men who hate trans women because we're better at makeup, or we look more fabulous. There's going to be some gay men who don't really like trans men because they're so fixated on penises. I don't know. So yeah, I can't really explain that one. I don't really understand any cis people's perspective. It's never been my experience. So, oh, let's see. 49, 40-ish. Let's see. Are trans people as homophobic as gay men are transphobic? This this seems to be a bit of a trend, and I do want to be clear. I have never met a gay man who is transphobic. Like, these are questions that are coming in, and I assume there's like a cultural thing to it. I don't know. But no, I haven't met any. I don't think I've even heard of trans people who are homophobic. Like, I'm sure there's some, because even though we only make up something like 2% of the population, that's still millions of us. So there have to be some, but I've never encountered it, you know? So I can't really say. Let's see, for 50, 50, 51, 50, 50, 45. This is a mess. This is just a total mess of notes. I'm so bad at this. Goodness. Let's see. Am. Okay. Am I still straight if I hook up with a trans person? Well, that depends. Were you straight to begin with? Because attraction is complicated, right? Like, often we're attracted to femininity or masculinity, but not always, because some people are bi and some people are pan, and they don't care what your presentation is. It's all about personality. It's all about the vibe when you're in the area, your attitude, and your confidence. Have you washed recently? Okay, in fairness, there's been times in my life when my standards were very low. Like, if you had washed recently, cool, let's go, you know? So I get it. No judgment from me. But what attracts you to another person? It might be closely linked to gender presentation. It might be closely linked to genitals. It might be linked to something else entirely. That's one of the reasons that I'm an asexual spectrum person, because I'm not actually attracted to genitals or a person's gender presentation. It's much more about their personality, specifically their intelligence, not just their intelligence. A person has to be kind, for one thing. Like, if you're mean, it doesn't matter how smart you are, I'm not gonna be attracted to you, you know? Various things like that. So it's really more about what specifically are you attracted to, because there's very few people who are just attracted to men or women, you know? Like, there's more to it than that. You're not actually attracted to everyone in that category. So, figure out what it is, and you should have an answer to your question there. So, yeah, um, the question, though, was, I think it was, I may have lost track. Am I still straight if I hook up with a trans person? Does it matter? Like, why does being straight matter so dang much? Hook up with who you wanna hook up with. Love who you love. Fuck the labels, you know? Don't let the label tell you who you can be with. That's dumb. Be with who you wanna be with. But also, if you wanna be technical, and I know some people are, like, super pedantic about this sort of thing. If you are a heterosexual person, then dating someone of the opposite gender would mean you're still heterosexual. So if you're a man, dating a trans woman would still be heterosexual. If you're a woman, then dating a trans man would still be heterosexual. It's fine, but the labels don't have to fucking matter so much, you know? Rar. Okay, 54. 15. I should just give this up, but at least it'll give me some general idea of when the questions are for when I don't even know if I'm going to timestamp this. This is just nonsense. This is just silliness. Oh my goodness. Do trans people have to get surgery? No. No, you don't. You don't have to do anything. In fact, less than 10% of trans people do ever get surgery, and that includes top surgery. As in trans men reducing their chest, the same way other men reduce their chest when they have boobs that they don't want, that make them feel uncomfortable and make their life hard. Fun fact, and this is there's so much data on my website, folks, betterthanember.com, the gender side tab. There's so much data. But one of the things that's on there is that cis boys have their breasts removed way more frequently than trans boys do. It is like the number one gender affirming surgery for children. And approximately 35% of born males have gynecomastia. Now, not all of them get top surgery about it, but they have them. So, and gynecomastia, not actually a problem, right? Like we only pretend it's a problem because it's men with boobs and we're like, oh, that's obviously a medical anomaly. It's not. 35%. It's normal. It's within typical normal human presentation. We only pretend it's a problem because they're men, and we have that dogmatic assertion that men aren't supposed to have boobs. But why would you not want boobs? You know what? I'm going to shut up. I'm going to get myself in trouble with my trans man friends because they're very uncomfortable with their boobs. That's not a thing I experience. But I don't have to personally experience something for it to be a problem for someone else. Much like I very much get that, trans men might not understand why I have problems with certain parts of my anatomy. Granted, there's other reasons for that, and there's another story that we might get into another time. Everything is complicated. It's fun. Goodness. Sapphire says, can we see your favorite plushie? You know what? You can. Give me a minute. I need to go fetch, but we can take a quick break. Let me see here. Let's. Oh, that one's too short. That one's way too short. What can we do? You know what? We'll do doggo. We'll do the doggo. We'll be back in a minute.
Meet Kip, named after a biblical scholar, holds 0 degrees, yet remains deeply authoritative. At Kip Academy, she teaches advanced disciplines like ethical trait distribution, comparative couch theology, and vigorous face licking. Questioning authority is encouraged. Not all treats are created equal. Each snack undergoes rigorous evaluation using the sniff, lick, and stare methodology. Some are rejected, some are accepted, some are declared non-canonical. Ask Kip about theology, ask Kip about life, ask Kip if you should go outside. She will not answer, but she will judge you. Kip, named for a scholar, correct about vibes.
Okay, so I couldn't actually decide in the moment. There's so many plushies I love for so many different reasons. One was knitted by my oldest for me. Like, it means ever so much to me. But also there's some that have been gifted to me for various things. There's others that have shown up for various reasons. You know how it is with plushies and other stuffies. Like, they have a great deal of sentimental value. They're not just soft and cuddly and whatnot. But I have two. I mean, obviously there's the boobie, and I do love the boobie. It is soft, it is perky, it is delightful, and it's funny as hell. But the boobie stays by my desk. These two stay on my bed. So take that for what you will. The first is my chicken nugget dino. And I should have worn a different shirt for this, but it's a chicken nugget dino. And it is very soft. And it's just, I love it so much. But also, and I am really running out of room here, my rainbow blow high. It's not technically a proper blow high because it's not from IKEA, but it's a meter long and it's fucking rainbow and it is so soft. And like I don't even need a pillow. Like, I use a pillow, but I don't need a pillow because like this thing, it's it's almost like a body pillow. Yes, it gets narrow at the end because tail and things. I should probably remove the tag. I never got around to removing it. It's fine. It's fine. But like, it's so soft and it's so big. I mean, look at the size of this thing. I can put my whole head. It's wild. So I love it very much. and sometimes it gets really loud around my house from time to time. I have 4 adult male roommates. They're oblivious, they're large, they thump at all hours of the day. And then there's also very large dogs here, and well, one very large dog. And while, doggos are all good boys, he's very loud and at all hours of the day. And so sometimes I have a hard time sleeping. I have a hard time sleeping for other reasons too, but that's neither here nor there. Just putting my hand on this thing because it's so soft and so comforting to touch soothes me a bit, and sometimes I'm able to get back to sleep. So there's that. I've warned you, I'm a little bit of a flibberty gibbet today. My goodness. All right. Let me see. I may have missed a question, and my apologies if so. The chat is very active, and I'm so glad. But if I miss something, forgive me. Again, tag me. It makes it easier for me to see. Let me see here. Jester says, why am I tempted to bully back? I cannot begin to answer. Possibly because he's asking for it. Oh my. Let me see. I'm relying on StreamYard to like tag questions. Fox says, what is sleep? Fair? I don't really know anymore. Oh, goodness. Titan is here. Hello, Titan. Titan says, if you try to fail and succeed, which have you done? Well, based on the way you phrased that, I would say you've succeeded at failing. But maybe because you haven't failed at succeeding, you weren't trying to succeed. So you succeed. I'm gonna stick with that. It'll be fine. All right, let's see. Just I have to note the time. All right, so we're at fuck, this is a mess. 102 28, whatever. Does every trans person transition fully? What do you mean by fully? Like, again, not everybody gets surgery, and you don't have to. Some people don't need it. Like, they don't. There's so many people who are just fine with hormones. Like, they don't experience sufficient lower dysphoria that it warrants surgery. And that's fine. If you're comfortable with what you've got, great. Good for you. But also, a lot of people never have the opportunity to get surgery, even if they want surgery. So, no, not every person goes through surgery. But also, some people only get surgery, right? Like, they never do hormones. They just do the surgery part. Now, I can't recommend that. It seems like it would put you at a pretty high risk of hormone problems. I suppose in one direction more than the other, but like, you do what you need. There isn't a roadmap, right? Like there is no guidebook, a certain number of boxes to check, and then you're done. Like, no, it's just like being any other kind of human. It's a lifelong process. But as far as the transition itself, you do what you need to be happy with you, and then you stop. And then you live. At least that's the idea. So yeah, it varies. Some people only ever need the social stuff, and that's fine too. Let's see. Does every trans person do you get to choose sizes? Depending on what you're talking about. Now, as I've mentioned before, what you get is a roll of the dice. And the same is true for other parts of transition. However, some people do get a surgery about this, right? Like, and by this I mean trans femmes, trans women, non-binaries who lean femward, so on and so forth. Often it's they want more. That's as may be. Some people do. And if you do that, then yes, you get to pick a size, just like any other woman getting implants. They have like a certain number. I don't even know the options because I haven't looked into it, because that's not a thing. I'm letting them grow. And honestly, I'm pretty okay with where they are right now. Maybe a little bit. You know what? Not important. Point is, I haven't looked into it. I'm never going to be able to afford it anyway. Let's be honest. I live in the US. It's never going to happen, ever. But if you do get implants, just like a cis woman, you get to choose the size because it's based on what you would be comfortable with. Similarly, if you're having tissue removed, then you get to choose how much. You can have them try to remove as much as possible or try to take half away, just like when a cis woman gets a reduction, all of these various things. I'm even less familiar with the lower surgical options for trans masc people, but as I understand it from friends who've gone through the process, you do get to choose the size somewhat. It depends more on which way you go about doing it, because, and again, this is just what I've heard from trans masc friends. I have no idea myself, but there's different processes of creating a new phallus. Sometimes there's a process called metoidioplasty, which is basically as you go through the process of hormonal transformation, you get bottom growth is what they call it, because it turns out the clitoris and the penis are the same thing. They just are the same thing. And if you give a clitoris testosterone, it starts to look more penis-like. It gets bigger. Now, it'll probably never be like as big as you might think, but for some people, that's all they need. And metoidioplasty just cuts it loose so that it can you know what? We can do a visualization. Instead of being attached, you cut it loose so that it can dangle. That's what that is, as I understand it. But some people do a phalloplasty, which was, oh shoot, the first one was in like the 1930s, 1940s, which incidentally is the only trans surgery procedure that was developed for trans people. Right? Like cis people benefited. There were a lot of wars in across the 20th century, and a lot of cis men got their junk blown off, and they benefited from having an artificial one put on. You know what I mean? But there's a few different ways to do it. There's some of them that involve like some kind of pump so that you get the uppy downy thing, the inflated deflated thing, if you know what I mean. But some of them that don't, and you'd have to talk to a specialist on that one, because I just don't know. Oh, goodness. Let's see. But again, when cis people get surgeries like these, they also get to choose the sizes, depending on the surgery, of course. 108 43, whatever. How do I ask for a person's pronouns? The same way, I'm tempted to be flippant about this, right? Like, how do you ask for a person's name? You walk up to him and say, "Hey, what's your name?" Now, you can be more polite about it. Like when I really want to find out someone's name, I will often be a little bit more crafty. I will, ask a friend, "Hey, what's their name?" Same thing with pronouns. "Hey, what's their pronouns?" Or I'll just listen carefully to a conversation until it gets used or whatever. But if time is of the essence and I need to be direct, or there's no one else around to ask, or whatever the case may be, what I do is I go up and say, "Hey, my name is Ember. And usually they'll pick up the social cue and they'll say their name, right? They'll be like, oh, good to meet you. My name is Blowhigh, whatever. Same thing with pronouns. It's a little more awkward to start out an introduction with pronouns. I generally go with names first, but you could combine them. You could be like, hey, my name's Ember and my pronouns are she, her. And then by the same social convention, most people will just follow your lead. Most people. There's some people who get a little bit edgy about pronouns. You've probably seen some videos about that here on the YouTubes. Generally speaking, a person who is afraid of a part of speech you learn about in kindergarten, they're a little on the insecure side, and you really don't have to worry about their gender. Oh goodness. But yeah, it's a Petite Flower puts it, you can just straight up ask, what are your pronouns? You can just ask that. So yeah. Sapphire says, yo dog, what do I call you? Yeah. Titan says, you say pronouns with the typical rising inflection to indicate a question mark. Isn't it weird that we pronounce question marks? Especially if you have the tism. Because while I understand that Project Hail Mary was fantastic, I still haven't seen it, but I read the book. The fact that Rocky concludes the alien, if you don't know, when he asks a question, he just says the sentence as a statement and then finishes the sentence with the word question. It'd be like, you are so tired question, that sort of thing. My oldest just turned 25, like earlier this month. Ever since they were a child, my oldest has done that. They'd be like, you are so tired question. I don't know. It's just a weird thing. It was idiosyncratic when they did it. The point is, you can do that if you really want to. I'm so tangenty. I'm so what else is new, right? And I realize I should have made the plushies like a super chat goal or something, but I really like my plushies. And that's another thing too, is you will find the damnedest random objects will give you physical joy. Like maybe it'll be plushies, maybe it'll be a new pair of shoes, maybe granted I'm heading femward, so it's going to be some of the more typical fem things, but like whatever it is you're doing, something will just like jump out at you and it'll just make you happy. And that's fucking great. It's I don't know if that's part of transition or if that's part of like living your life more fully. I have no idea. But whatever it is, it's wonderful. If you can get stuff like that, lean into it. It's fine. It's fine. Oh my. Okay. I am so far off from, like, I didn't even write down that last question. I'm so bad at this. It's not like I've been on YouTube for almost 4 years. All right. 11340. What is the difference between trans, non-binary, and intersex? Okay. I understand why people are confused because they think trans is related to sex, and it isn't really. Like sort of like we were talking about with your sexual orientation. People get hung up on what you're attracted to relative to your gender presentation, and that's not really how that works. Similarly, because trans makes the way we understand it, the way we describe it in our current language, it's not ideal. There's what you were assumed to be at birth and what you actually are. And so anytime that your gender is different from what was assumed about you at birth, you're considered trans. And cis is your gender is the same as what was assumed about you at birth, which isn't the best system, because what was assumed about you at birth isn't actually biological or psychological on your part. Like, someone else made a guess. And so when you're saying you're trans or whatever, you're just saying the person who made the guess was mistaken. Intersex is a different thing, because it has nothing to do with your gender identity. It's much closer to your anatomy, but it's not always your anatomy. Like, there's a whole bunch of different intersex things, and you could argue that an intersex person is only cis if they're non-binary, because so many places, the birth certificate, you can only have an M or an F put on it. But if you're born intersex, then you're not actually male or female in the typical sense. You're intersex. You're somewhere in between. It's a long talk for another time. But intersex is a cluster of a number of different characteristics, because sex is a cluster of a number of different characteristics involving genetics, hormones, chromosomes, gametes, physical anatomy, reproductive organs, all the things that make a person male or female also make a person intersex. And many people have argued that trans people are a kind of induced intersex, and there's something to that, because the fact that you're a trans person doesn't matter to a physician treating a broken arm or a stab wound, but the fact that you're on hormones. So, they look at your original birth certificate and they're like, oh, this person was female at birth. But the fact you're on testosterone, that you have a testosterone dominant endocrine system, that matters to how they provide healthcare, because it changes so many things. How much blood is in your body, what your heart rate is, how many calories your body goes through a day, the way your brain functions. Like, there's so many things that depend on your dominant hormone. And so they need to know that. So in a way, yeah, it kind of is an induced intersex state. Your physical characteristics are going to contain a mixture of qualities. But that said, when we say intersex, we're generally talking about a person who was born with mixed characteristics. Sometimes they don't show up until later in life, like the Guividoches, who are people who are assumed to be female at birth, but then just grow a penis in puberty. It happens. It has happened for thousands of years. We have historical records going back to like 300 BCE. Watch for a video on that stuff coming up soon. There's a lot. There is a lot. To summarize, a trans person is just someone whose gender identity doesn't match what was assumed about them and written about them on a piece of paper by someone else at birth. And a non-binary person is also a trans person. Not every non-binary person uses the label trans because they don't want to get pigeonholed into this idea of they're transitioning from one binary to the other. They want to be neither of those. And it's not always in the middle. Some are closer to one than the other. Some are completely off that spectrum and off doing something else entirely. That's another talk for another time. But there's a lot more to it than just being between male or female, masculine and feminine presentations. It's not just one spectrum. There's several spectra that intersect. But it's a topic for another time. The point is, if your gender is not the same as what was assumed about you at birth, that's trans. And non-binary is a subcategory of trans. And again, not all non-binary people use that. In fact, there's a subcategory of non-binary people called genderqueer. They don't all use the term non-binary, So labels, they're only useful to the extent that they can help you convey accurate information quickly. That's all. That's it. That's all they're good for. Let's see. I have another longer looking one. So I will check in with the chat again, and then we will get to that. I'm scrolling. I'm trying to catch up. I didn't leave it on auto scroll, so I wouldn't miss anything, hopefully. Let's see. That's for Bragwin. Good to see you, Bragwin, by the way. Titan says, I think NB would be more intergender. Kind of, but not necessarily, because you can be like completely outside the genders. You probably typed that long before I got to that part. So yeah. I'm rapid scrolling to try to like catch up. I didn't see any more obvious questions, so we'll just we'll just go on from here. It'll be fine. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's see. 120, 35. Oh, this is a very bad idea. Okay. Are all trans women biologically male? I understand why someone asked this question. I mean, they may have thought they were being offensive, but that is a legitimate question because there are TERFs, gender critical anti-feminists, if you prefer, running around saying only a man can identify as a trans woman. But that's not actually true. First of all, there's intersex people, and there's a lot more intersex people than you might think. In fact, coming at it from another point of view, there are a lot of people who strongly suspect, for various reasons, they're coming at it from multiple different disciplines, from endocrinology, from neurology, from genetics, a whole bunch of different things, that suspect that trans people might be trans because there's something intersex within our physiology, our biological makeup, that isn't yet recognized by medical science. Like, again, on the website, betterthanumber.com, in the gender site tab, bunch of studies, including neuroscience studies, that show that the brains of trans people more closely resemble brains typical of the gender with which they identify than what was assumed about them at birth, even before hormones. To put that plainly, dozens of studies looking at different areas of the brain, from firing patterns, from structure size, from different cell type counts, all sorts of things in all different areas of the brain. Every time we look, trans people's brains, even without hormones, more closely resemble the gender that they resonate with, for lack of a better term, than was assumed about them at birth. Every single time. And since the brain is a part of the body and a big part of sex determination comes from your neurons, then you really could make a very strong case that trans people are just intersex. You can also make a historical case, because as it turns out, prior to 1915, that's exactly what we did for thousands of years. Again, video on that coming soon, TM. But yeah, until the early 20th century, trans people were just considered part of intersex. Now, we didn't have a lot of names for a lot of intersex things. It's just if anything was anomalous, if anything, reproductive organs, gametes, gonads, whatever, were out of spec for what was typical of people in the two more popular ranges, you're intersex. You know, we're having arguments and discussions today over whether PMOS counts as intersex because there's no anatomical ambiguity. But it's not just anatomical, it's hormonal. And there's a genetic component that leads into PMOS. And it's definitely congenital because the conditions that cause it to manifest are there from birth. So I would call it intersex, but not everybody would. It probably depends on use case. It probably depends on specifically what you're talking about, which is true for all sex conditions. Because when you're talking about sex, the evolutionary biologists like to pretend it's all about gametes. But that only matters in the context of evolution, because you need the reproduction for evolution to work. In every other aspect of your life, what you produce or can reproduce with doesn't actually matter. Like, no one's checking your cell counts at the door to a lavatory or a sports team. Nor is anyone actually checking your gametes or your genitals or your reproductive anatomy. Lately, we've started checking hormones, and we used to do karyotype tests. We stopped because it turned out a whole lot of people were intersex and didn't know. But c'est la vie. And it's all very stupid. It's very, very stupid. If you are a woman, if you were, you grew up a woman, you lived as a woman, everyone in your life accepts you as a woman, and you've been competing as a woman for years, why does it matter if you have a slight chromosomal variation? Does that really make a difference? Oh, we do an unfair advantage. Sports are never fair. They're not designed to be fair exactly. Like, we want to get good sport out of them, so there are certain considerations for fairness, which is why some sports have, like, weight classes, and you know what? I'm getting off on a hell of a tangent that we do not have time for. Suffice it to say, are all trans women biologically men? What does biologically mean? Because it's not like we're non-biological. It's not like we're machines or robot people, you know? People tend to use the word biological as a polite replacement or perhaps as a dog whistle to stand in for real sex. When they say, "Are trans women biologically male?" they're saying, "Are trans women really male?" Is that their real sex? As in, isn't your real sex male? So do try to avoid that linguistic shortcut. You may be saying something that you didn't intend to, although some people definitely do it with the express purpose of causing offense because they're jerks. They're bullies. That's what they do, is they try to hurt people because they think that makes them more right. Unless you want to be associated with those kinds of people, don't do that. Try not to do that. I realize a lot of people, they've got it in their habitual speech now to say, well, I'm talking about biological sex. What does that mean, though? Because sex is a multifaceted category. Are we talking about genetic sex? Are we talking about anatomical sex? Because those are not the same thing. Are we talking about hormonal sex or neurological sex or psychological sex? It's all context dependent. So when you're dealing with a person with mixed sex characteristics, whether they're a congenital intersex person or an induced one, and I do believe you could make a very strong case that trans people are congenitally intersex, just in a way that isn't recognized currently by the literature, whatever. What matters is the specific thing you're talking about. If you need to know a person's hormone levels, then you're dealing with hormonal sex. What's between their legs does not matter. If you're dealing with a person's fertility issues, then their reproductive organs and their gametes, then they matter, but not for other things, So what are we talking about? There is no biological sex because it's a mixture of categories for everyone. For some people, it's the same, but you might be surprised how many people it isn't. In any case, also, no. Are all trans women biologically male? No. Intersex people exist, and a lot of intersex people choose to transition. Some of us get transitioned when we're newborns because we're born intersex, and then someone makes a decision and does a surgery to try to force us into one category or the other based on some old, outdated, and highly damaging theories. There's a lot of intersex people who had a decision made for them as a child, and when they grow up, it turns out they prefer the other direction. They guessed wrong. It happens a lot. So yeah, there's a lot of trans women who are intersex people. And also, there's detransitioners. The people that the gender critical anti-feminists care so much about. It turns out they don't actually care so much about them because there's a lot of us running around who turns out were actually assigned female at birth. And when we try to get back to that, whether you call us trans or D-trans or whatever, because in my case, I'm intersex. What is that? Is that a male transitioning to female? I realize they carve out a special pleading exception and say, no, it's a female detransitioning, but they're transitioning from being male. So what do you mean? As with many of these bad faith questions, there's a hidden premise. There's a circular argument buried in there. They're asserting their own correctness before they even ask the question. It's bad news. It's not the best way to have honest conversation. Bad faith engagement is often to assert one's own rightness rather than to learn where one can be less wrong. They're not interested all that much in being less wrong, but the specific answer to the question, are all trans women biologically male? No. Okay. These are getting more complicated. 131. Yeah, 131 is fine. What does trans women or women mean? Well, this could be a very complicated topic. To keep it as short and simple as possible, what does blonde women or women mean? What does white women are women mean? What does short women are women mean? Now, a lot of people who use that phrase, trans women or women, are possibly trying to be provocative, or possibly they're using it as a slogan to show solidarity with other people in a community. It could be used to mean a lot of things that aren't what it's specifically saying. But as for what it is specifically saying, trans is an adjective. So a trans woman is linguistically, ontologically a woman. QED. Like, I don't understand why this is hard to understand. Now, you do get a lot of people who do the bad faith questions, who are trying to provoke an argument or try to muddy some words, but oh goodness, the apologists do love word games. And the gender critical anti-feminists do love the apologists playing word games. So there's that. Women are women. Whenever you add an adjective, that adjective still fits in the category. Women who vote are women. Voting women are women. It's almost a tautology, but it's a categorization thing. The subcategory always fits in the larger category. Just like women are humans. What does that mean? Well, there's more kinds of humans than just women, but women are humans. There's more kinds of women than just trans women, but trans women are women. This is another one of those kindergarten concepts. If you weren't so afraid of pronouns, you probably would have learned this one too. Goodness. Let's see. 93. I should stop. I keep clicking my pen when I set it down. It's muscle memory, it's habit, but that means I have to click it again when I pick it back up in order to write with it, and that's annoying. This is a bad plan. I don't like that I have to write down the timestamp every time. It's very silly. Can you even define a woman or a man? What is the difference to you? This is another one of those bad faith questions. Matt Walsh is kind of famous for this one, but also Ben Shapiro and pretty much all of the reactionary anti-feminists and some of the, women anti-feminists. Say la vie. They like to say you can't even define a woman, or you can't even define a man, or whatever. You can't tell the difference. You're confused about genders, but that's just projection. They keep asking because they don't know themselves, right? Like, you can define this stuff any which way you want, because there's an argument to be made for utility of definitions. What is the function of the definition in the context? Like we were just talking about with medical conditions. Are we talking about hormonal sex? Are we talking about phenotypic appearance? When we're talking about man and woman, that's social categories, that's presentation, and that's interpersonal interaction. So in what context are we talking about it? But if you want to keep it just short and simple, a man or a woman are, let's just go with man for simplicity. A man is a person whose psychological understanding of themselves best fits with the cultural typical ranges of behavior and appearance categorized as being associated with males and masculinity. Now, I would love it if our language were more accurate so it didn't require so many fucking words to say what I mean. We need better words. We do. But that's where we're at right now. I think the conservatives keep asking because they don't actually know. They keep saying, what is a woman? And that is a malformed question. Woman is a category. The correct formulation of that question is, who is a woman? And when you ask who is a woman, then either you have to allow people to hold up their hand and say, I'm a woman, or no, I'm not a woman, or I'm a man, or I'm a non-binary person, or whatever the case may be. You either allow self-ID or you need some kind of criterion. And the criterion that you use depends on the circumstances. Are we going to let Matt Walsh pick? Because you know he's going to want to check your pubic hair. Because remember, according to Matt Walsh, 16-year-olds ought to be pregnant. Are we going to put the Epstein class in charge of determining who counts as what based on genital exams? I don't think so. You know? I mean, isn't it wild that we have to protect the children from the people running around shouting about protecting the children? Like that is a red flag. Anybody who's running, and it always has been that way, right? Like in the Phyllis Schlafly period, in the Anita Bryant period, the people shouting protect the children are the ones you need to protect the children from. We see that right now too with women, because every moral panic, it's women and children. If you've seen the member content, the workshop that I did at NanoCon with Coleman about sex, gender, and culture wars, every moral panic, you can almost define them when someone starts shouting about we have to protect the women, protect the children. Moral panic. But when someone starts shouting that, if there isn't a fire or your ship is sinking, women and children first, apparently. If someone is shouting about being a defender of women, check his hard drive. Because it turns out almost all of them are the people that you need to protect the women and children from. Or so it seems, based on recent personal experience. Holy shit. Although I do have to say, the fact that one guy told on himself so hard, hilarious. Another story for another time. If you're new, another story for, it's complicated. It's there's too much backstory to go into. Granny sends a super chat for $10. Thank you so much, Kelly. And says, where do transphobes get their morals? I don't think they have any. I would have to be, maybe they do. I don't want to like overly generalize, but I am not convinced that they do have morals. I just don't see any evidence of it, because it seems like there is no standard. There's nothing, there's no bar too low for them to crawl under it, you know? I don't. Okay, for example, 138, 30-ish, whatever. For example, Helen Joyce is often held up as one of the paramount, the pinnacle, the most magnificent in behavior, in style, in understanding, in charisma, in knowledge of the subject of the gender critical anti-feminists. For one, she's an atheist, right? So she's one of the few people that they can't just go, you're a bigot because God, right? Like she doesn't worship God. She's a bigot for her own reasons. But helpfully, our least favorite former PhD mathematician wrote a book about why she hates trans people so much. And in that book, on page 197, she just outright says, it's actually the Jews behind it. They're trying to replace the women for some nefarious reason. So, yes, scratch a transphobe, find a racist, or an anti-Semite, which you could argue is the same thing. Yeah, do they have morals? I don't know. I don't see any reason to think so. I personally suspect, and this has to do with the latest regular recorded video on my channel, I suspect that what they consider to be moral is in relation to the emotional narrative that they're captive of. Now, what I mean by that is that a lot of humanity seems to be in the grip of a story, a mythology, a culture, if you will, if we care to define a culture as a people enacting a story into history. Often these stories involve a creation myth and they involve a great destiny. And then there's what you have to do right now to actualize the great destiny. Now, things like Christianity and other religions fall into this category, but it isn't just those things. There are non-religious versions. For example, the mythology, the propaganda about the United States. You know, how did we get here? Well, first we were oppressed by Great Britain over taxes, but then the great freedom-loving landowners saved us all with a great war, and it's mythology, right? Like, it's based on historical events, much like the life of Jesus is based on historical events, but it is mythology. It's telling a story as that critical first part of a narrative in order to become a cultural institution. So, and I realize I'm taking a long way around, but I'm trying to explain really complicated subjects in a very short period of time to get to the point. Transphobes seem to be captive to a narrative, not necessarily a mythology per se, although some of them have built their own mythologies. A lot of these conspiracy theory types build mythologies of their own, like flat earthers, for example. Every flat earther has a different mythology. Some of them base their flat earth belief directly on the Bible. The Bible says the earth is flat. And so that's why, like young earthers, the Bible says the earth is young. So they just believe it for that reason. They import the mythology, but sometimes they cook up their own mythology. Like, for example, NASA's lying about the shape of the earth because of financial reasons or because of demons or whatever. Sometimes that goes back to the Bible. A lot of transphobes are captives of mythology, and sometimes it's an abuse response kind of situation. There's transphobes who run around bullying other people into becoming transphobes, and I don't really understand how that works. Like, if you go up to someone and you start harassing them and you start bullying them and you start abusing them and you expect them to come around to your way of thinking, apparently it works. I can't say in very great numbers, but apparently it does work. But they call it peaking. It's sort of like with incels, red pilling, right? It's showing you the horrible truth of reality, but that's actually the indoctrination into the narrative. That's what that is. It's capturing you inside the narrative, bypassing your critical thinking with an emotional hook to bind you to the mythology. If they have anything resembling morals, and that's why I took us on this wind around here. If they have anything resembling morals, it's only relative to the ultimate good of serving their narrative, the story that they're trying to enact into the world. What is good? That which serves God, or that which serves the narrative, I suppose. At least that's my take. So it's a very long way to answer that question, but I feel like it was important in order to get all the context of what I was trying to convey into there. And again, medicine makes me a little long-winded. So yeah. Next one. Oh goodness. I'm not even halfway through, folks. I need to shorten things up a bit because I'm starting to run out of steam already. My goodness. I'm hoping to do a stream for my birthday. My first birthday on YouTube. 3/4 of the way through my first year on YouTube, I ended up doing a 12-hour live stream. And as we're getting close to the end, as this is one of the last shows I'm going to get to do, I kind of wanted to try to beat that record. Just out of sheer ambitiousness. Realistically, I don't think so. Because we're like not even 2 hours in and I'm starting to run out of energy. Oh, goodness. I don't know. Granny suggests part 2. I could do a part 2, but I don't know when because I've got another show already booked for Saturday. Mark Reed and I do debate reviews every Saturday evening. We alternate between channels. This week we're on my channel. So I can't even do a show earlier in the day. I mean, I could, but well, not on Saturdays because I usually spend Saturdays with my son, who is the one child who still lives in the area. But it tends to hurt the algorithm when you do multiple shows in the same day. You can get away with a live video or a live show and a pre-recorded video because the algorithm treats them separately. And shorts are a separate category also. But doing 2 lives, they tend to step on each other. So I can't advise, but whatever. Sunday, I might be able to do something. I don't know. Oh. Petite Flower says, I vote you skip the bad faith questions. Oh my goodness, there's so many of them. Maybe I should take the bad faith ones and like do a pre-recorded video about those because they do take a little bit longer to respond to. But also I think more people, well, I don't know, because like pre-recorded videos have just not been reaching anyone recently, So I don't know. I can figure it out. But for the time being, yeah, maybe skipping the bad faith ones would be wise. All right, let's take a quick break. So I can like refresh a little bit and then we'll see what more we can get through. It'll be fun. All right, so this one is going to be a little bit longer. So this is a good time to go like refresh your beverages or whatever. But it does include that little bit about that guy who told on himself and also some of our most frequent gender critical anti-feminists. Enjoy.
I have a problem with this stuff being normalized across the spectrum, and specifically, like, why push this on kids? Why introduce this to kids?
It's better because it's better.
How though?
Yeah, because it's better.
Can you make an argument for
Sure,
it?
because it's better.
In what ways?
The ways in which it's better.
You're incapable of being a good person. You're an evil person. You're a terrible person. At the core fabric of who you are. That's why we need laws. We need laws because we're bad people. All of us are bad people.
You can't spell Pride Month without demon. PRIDEMONTH.
If we don't know who the women are, because they are just people, then we won't be able to pull the women up to equality with men.
This is a really vile, misogynistic movement that is definitely a danger to women.
We have to try to limit the harm. And that means reducing or keeping down the number of people who transition. And that's for 2 reasons. One of them is that every one of those people is a person who's been damaged. But the second one is every one of those people is basically, a huge problem to a sane world.
Transgenderism must be eradicated.
Carl, that kills people.
The LGBT, transgender, grooming our children's minds is a national security threat. We need to hold people for treason, start having some public hearings, and start executing people.
I was having breast tissue removed. Okay? I was always a man.
This is war. Kill or be killed. Period. End of story.
I will use whatever gives me victory. I don't care about the truth, and I don't care about the law. I care about one thing: the control.
But then they rigged the election, and now we won, so I'm going to be your president.
Then what happened is they rigged the election, and I became president, so that was a good thing.
I agreed with many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president, but I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian.
I just want to say I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
It was actually a tremendous blessing to these children for them to be killed and go to heaven and be with God.
How about we all come together and say, let's stop attacking pedophiles?
You can give consent when you're drunk, unless you're all saying, I've been raped and I'm a rapist.
Stop letting people pressure you into thinking,
I want to be ignorant, honestly.
Being a Christian doesn't exclude us from experiencing spiritual dryness.
We're bad people. All of us are bad people.
Hope y'all enjoyed. I could see from the comments that some of you hadn't actually seen that before. Clearly, I'm not doing enough live shows. My goodness. Yeah, it's a lot, and I get that, you know, it's not for everybody. Some people it's some of it's funny, but some of it's a little intense because it's kind of real. You know, these are people with real political power who believe this shit and are trying to make all of our lives substantially worse because of their narratives, their mythologies. It's kind of why secularism is important, you know, but that's a topic for another time. Anyway, if I should have said this at the beginning, medicine and I'm bad at my job. If you're still watching, you must be into this kind of thing. So please take a second and hit the subscribe button. It actually does help a surprising amount. So please, thank you. I don't have clicky nails like Samantha Lux, but we can just imagine. Thank you so much. All right. How does HRT work? So this is, it's complicated. It's really complicated because, like, to fully explain this would require an entire crash course on human biochemistry, which is a bit much. So for the sake of our conversation today, and I realize this is people asking who are considering HRT, probably, who are like, what's going to happen to me if I start, that sort of thing. To put it plainly, you're altering your body's hormones to better match the typical range associated with the gender you're trying to transition towards. And I mean towards, not necessarily to, because a lot of non-binary people want to see some changes, but not be like the typical other gender thing. That's why they're non-binary. Not all non-binary people use HRT, but some do. And it's because they want to have like a mixture of characteristics. I'm sure you've seen some. You know, there's a person who was like won an Oscar or something. I don't pay attention to celebrities really, but I remember seeing memes go by on my feeds in the socials about a person winning some kind of award like that, an Oscar, an Emmy, or whatever. And they're in a dress and they have very femme-looking anatomy, but they're also very fuzzy because they're non-binary. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to present with both sets of characteristics and screw anyone who doesn't like that, you know, that sort of thing. So what are you looking for from HRT? Because there's some parts that come as a package deal, right? Like you can't get the chest growth without the hip growth, you know, for instance. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And how do you want to go about it? And also understand that just like with the chest growth and everything else, you have certain elements encoded into your genes. The hormones activate the genes and get them to express themselves. They get the cells to do the things in a certain different way. But how it will manifest depends on what's in your genes. And so it's going to be unique to you. It's actually kind of, it's an interesting thing to think about how every cis man has a breast size encoded into his DNA, and he'll never know what it would have been. but it's there. It's just really funny to me. But yeah, the HRT works by replacing your primary sex hormone with the other one. Now, everybody has both sex hormones, right? Like your body, everyone's body makes some of both. But what we're talking about in terms of HRT, and this is true for cis people too. There's a whole lot of cis women who take HRT for the same reason trans women do, to get their hormone levels into typical ranges for health reasons. Sometimes it's metabolism, sometimes it's bone health, sometimes it's to improve brain fog, whatever the case may be. And there's also cis women taking testosterone to improve libido or improve energy or improve strength or whatever the case may be. Now, it gets complicated because these things do come as a package deal, and sometimes there's unpredictable consequences. There are cis women taking testosterone for strength or libido that discover they're starting to grow some chin hairs. You can't isolate the effects, and you never know what your effects are going to be until you try it, you know? That said, getting permanent changes takes a while. The bones move very, very slowly, and other fleshy bits take several months to even get started, really. Like, bodies are slow. So you can try something out and see how you feel before you decide once and for all. I hope that makes sense. What does it actually do? How does it work? Is it makes your body start behaving in a pattern more typical of the direction you're heading, whether it's femward or maskward, as the case may be. And it will. It isn't, as I said earlier in this show, it isn't just secondary sexual characteristics. It's brain function, it's metabolism, it's flavors, it's scents, it's senses. You know, there's so much that will change because your biochemistry will change based on the hormones. And again, that's true for cis people as well as trans people. When cis women get on estrogen therapy for, perimenopause, they'll report big changes in their sensory perceptions. It's almost like as you get older and your vision starts getting fuzzier, and then you get your hands on a pair of glasses and suddenly you're like, holy shit, I can see again. I didn't realize how bad my vision had been getting. It's kind of like that. That's broadly how it works. But it is an extremely complicated subject. Human biochem. Godless Grady says, maybe I'm ace because I have no T. It's not impossible, but I don't necessarily think so. It's going to vary from person to person. Some people just naturally have a low libido. Some people, their desires run in a different direction. Being ace, as you know, is not actually a defect. That said, hormone therapy, like I mentioned much earlier in the show, is likely to have impacts on your sexuality. Some people change their orientation. Some people don't, but libido changes and a whole bunch of different things. So specifically what could happen on hormone therapy, there's no way to know for sure. It keeps things interesting. Bragwin says, I have high T and am ace. So yeah, right. Like before I even started the medical phase of my transition, I was really not interested in sex. In fairness, I don't know what my baseline T was, but whatever, but still, it is good to have a more balanced and nuanced perspective. Okay, let's see. That one's probably bad faith, but I'll hit it real quick. When did you decide to be trans? What do you mean? You don't decide to be trans any more than you decide to be cis, or you decide to be gay, or you decide to be hetero. Like, you don't decide. You just are. And in my case, I knew that as long as I've been able to know anything about myself. Or more precisely, because again, intersex people often get assigned a category surgically. Weird how the protect the children people never have a problem with normalizing surgeries on intersex infants, but that's a whole other topic for another time. But they get it wrong a lot. So, like, in my case, they normalized me in the wrong direction, and I kept insisting my entire childhood I was a little girl, and everyone around me kept telling me I was wrong. Now, I don't know how things would be if things had been different, because they weren't different, you know? But I suppose a more correct question, Aunt Jer says the same time I decided to be white. Yes. Petite Flower says, better question, better formulation of the question is, when did you discover you were trans? That's trickier. Because, like, when you discover that you're not like other people think you are, for me, that was very early in life. Again, as far back as I can remember. But I didn't have the language. I didn't have the term transgender. In fact, I've mentioned before several times that when I would see trans people on the Jerry Springer show, I would try to point at that to tell adults, and not just Jerry Springer, just everybody knows what I mean when I say Jerry Springer. Like, it was all of them, Maury Povich and Phil Donahue and Sally Jesse Raphael and all of them, right? But when they had trans people on, I would point at them and be like, that's what I've been trying to tell you my whole life. That's what I feel like. And they tell me, no, honey, that's not real. They just made that up for TV. But when they were on those shows, they didn't use the word transgender. They would say transvestite or something else that wasn't quite right. Because actually, one time I recall I went to school and tried to have a discussion with my counselor about what it means to be a transvestite. And he was under the impression that it was what we would today call drag, right? It's you enjoy wearing the other gender's clothing for performative reasons. And I'm like, I don't think that's quite correct, but that's definitely not what I'm talking about. So I didn't have the term for transgender until I was well into adulthood. So it made it difficult for me to tell people. It's messy. It's weird. Another way you could take that question is, when did you decide to transition? And I did actually answer this earlier in this show, but it's getting to be a somewhat long show. So to briefly mention it, I needed the stars to align, because once I figured out all the things that needed figuring out, I thought I was too old. I thought I was too far gone and I had no chance. That the best I could do was to get stuck halfway and be a freak show my whole life. But then I reached a point where I kind of stopped caring. I was at the end of my life. I was like, I didn't want to die, but I kind of kept hoping I wouldn't wake up. And so I was like, why not? For science. And also, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. A lot of trans people told me, maybe you'd be happy. If it's a thing that you've wanted your whole life, maybe you'd be happy. How dare? What motive is this? In this culture of always putting yourself last, never thinking about your own needs, your own desires, your own wants, your own worries, your own priorities, your own values, and what you feel like, whether you're happy? What does that even mean? I met a whole bunch of other trans people who only started their transitions later in life. And of course, they wished they'd started sooner, but they were all very happy with where they were. They showed me it was possible to do later in life. And then there, of course, is also Maya. Recently, in fact, just a couple of days ago, in December of whatever the fuck year it was, whatever year is immediately before 900 days ago, Maya had a birthday stream. on her channel. And it was like a big panel show kind of thing. And after the show went off, all the people who were there hung out backstage and chatted for a while, as is often the case. And after everybody else left, Maya and I had a chat because I was still presenting as non-binary at the time. And Maya was like, I really don't want to be offensive. You're one person that I know I can ask about this. What the fuck does non-binary mean? And so I described my understanding of the umbrella term, but also my relationship to it, my own personal experience. And she went, okay, thank you so much for telling me. What I'm hearing is that you're a trans woman who just hasn't ever transitioned. And that kind of made a penny drop in my head. I'm like, well, shit. And so I just kind of thought about it. I just kind of let it sit there. And I was still a smoker at the time. And so after we got off the air, I went outside and I had a cigarette. And it was a brilliant, beautiful, clear night. Did I say blue? Medicine. Again, interfering with my brain function. Clear night. Orion right over my house, glowing brightly. And so I'm looking at Orion. I love looking at the stars. And so I'm looking at Orion and I'm having a smoke and I'm thinking. And then the biggest fucking shooting star right across Orion. A giant bolide, a huge fireball. And of course, there's that voice in the back of your head going, make a wish. But I didn't have to. I already knew what my wish was. And the fact that that was my wish, to go for it, to transition. So what if I fail? That was the deepest wish of my heart in that moment. And that made it clear that's what I wanted to try to do. A few days later, I quit smoking. A few days after that, I started taking care of my health. And a few months after that, I finally got my hands on HRT. I think that's a pretty good place to put a pin in things. Maybe we'll try to do a part 2 soon. Thank you all so much for joining. This is a hell of a milestone. I didn't know for sure we'd make it this far. It bothers me a lot that I might not see a day 1000. But as I've said many times before, now that I finally love my life, I'd like to love it a little bit longer. And so I'm going to fight like hell to keep living it. Thank you all for being a part of it. Until next time, live long and prosper. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for July. Miranda, Tux, Ian Chen, Maya Adkison, Robin Webster, Karen Butcher, Ember Lynn, Margie, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, Thriver Scapegoat, Katie Bluebird, Noise Ending, Secular Feelinist, and Alira the Free. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which also includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.